amateur players take their game to the next level.
There's no crying in baseball.
Forget about the curveball, Ricky. Give him the heater.
You're killing me, Schmalz.
Candlesticks always make a nice wedding present.
Oh, people take vacations shorter than that. Pick me out a winner, Bobby.
Now here is your show and go team.
Yay. Should we add some crowd in there next time? Yeah. No? All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Show and Go. This is a baseball podcast to help educate the amateur players, coaches, and parents about the game within the game of baseball. My name is Tim Dillard, and I have been a pitcher in professional baseball for the last 15 years. And to my left is current big leaguer and 2016 World Series MVP,
dun, dun, dun.
Ben Zobrist.
Wow. And across from me is elite sports trainer Josh Costello. And rounding out is the head baseball coach at Trevecca Nazarene University here in beautiful Nashville, Tennessee, Ryan Schmalz. Four just promotional savvy men. we're all trying to promote something with our shirts or hats. That's great.
What are you promoting? What's FBK1?
This guy sent me a shirt.
Free shirt.
And yeah, it's like fastball, strike one. Like as a pitcher, you want to throw strike one. We'll get into that.
What's your strike hat? one? We're going to get into strike one?
Yeah,
What's your hat all
important.
about?
My hat, this is me. It shows how much I adore myself.
Dim Dillard beanie.
Zoe, what are you wearing today?
I am wearing my
Nashville
Vols t-shirt and also hat. Right, so
that was the Nashville Vols hat?
Yeah, this hat and shirt kind of go together. But this was a team. It was a minor league team before it became the Nashville Sounds. Ooh. There was the minor league team of the Nashville area was the Nashville Vols back in the 40s.
I was on that team.
Yeah, Tim was there. He was a rookie back then.
Been around a while.
I think they played down there where the new Sounds ballpark is too. Sulphurdale. Yeah, that's kind of where their field was.
Yeah, that's exactly where it was.
Wow.
Costello?
Dodgers.
Los Dodgers?
Dodgers. Representing.
That's brutal.
Why
man.
the Dodgers, man?
Brutal.
You know
they're a big rival
and a brewer
right
here, right?
Well, because when I train the guys in the winter, they all give me crap because I don't wear their team. Give them some respect.
So the only guy you train in the room is who, though?
In this room?
and he plays for the Cubs.
Yeah,
so,
he does.
But you're still wearing a Dodger.
Wow,
right now.
I feel like I'm getting picked on right now.
You should.
I'm looking at Tim. Tim, where you at?
I'm looking at you, see?
Okay.
DimBeanie's looking right at you.
You wish you had a DimBeanie. Everyone does.
What do you got, Coach? What are you wearing?
I got Next Level Ball Player. My
What
man,
is
Franco.
Next Level Ball Player?
Next Level Ball Player is a company started by David Franco, who is what's his title with the Mariners? I know he's the mental coach for them. Is that
skills?
I believe
mental skills coach? I think.
I believe he's doing the minor league mental skills stuff for the Mariners, but more on the Spanish side. I think like bilingual because he's great with.
He spent a lot of time in Dominican, right?
Yeah, he has. He spent a lot of time in Dominican before.
Yeah. Anyway, works with mental skills for the Mariners. And anyway, this website that he started helps amateur high school players get seen by college coaches and gets college coaches information, and also helps them just with information, kind of like what we're doing now, actually. Tries to get information in the hands of, useful information to get recruited and how to handle the recruiting process and that kind of stuff to high school kids. So my man Franco.
Yeah. And also represent Trevecca, of course.
Of course. We got to get Franco in here sometime.
We do.
He talk about stories. He once traveled from Nashville to St. Louis to Game 7 of, this was like, I don't remember what year it was.
2006.
No, it was after that.
It was 11.
I was here.
2011.
Yeah, it was 11. Didn't have a ticket. Didn't have any money. Somehow got into Game 7 of the World Series. Franco, only Franco could do this.
Yeah. And I think he was celebrating with the team on the field by the end of the night.
He umpired the 4th through 7th. What we got for today?
Yeah, what are we talking about today?
Mental toughness. Mental toughness.
Good subject. This can apply to anything, right?
Oh, absolutely. I let a friend of mine look at our list of topics that I have for this. Chris Talley, he's a businessman. He looks at this and he looks at the first one. And he's like, okay, you're not talking about baseball. Looks at the second one. This isn't about baseball. Every topic that he read, he applied it to his job. whether one was like how to be a good teammate. One was, mental toughness. What's the last one we just did?
No clue.
How about showcases?
Showcases. Yeah. Okay. Now, maybe that's like trade shows for him. Yeah. These all have a lot of carryover to everyday life. But
Yep.
Okay. So define mental toughness. It's kind of one of those things that could be different for everybody, right? Tim, you first. Go.
I think so.
one sentence. Go.
Mental toughness. It's the opposite of being a mental midget. Not to be offensive, but I'm just saying, you hear that terminology in professional baseball. This guy's a mental midget. And you don't really hear anybody go, oh, that guy's mentally tough. You only hear the negative side of it. So it's easily spotted. If you're a guy that is like a folding chair and that's all you do is fold when the pressure gets on, that's not usually a physical thing. That's usually a mental thing. So for me, mental toughness is just the opposite of being a mental midget.
Yeah, so you mentioned the word pressure, right? So I said it's the ability to deal with stress and continue to operate at an optimal level.
Dang,
so
that's from the Webster.
Good. That's good.
Oh, that came straight from here, buddy. Oh, the Zobrist dictionary. That's all I got. But no, I don't know what that means, but that's what I came up with.
What else is in the dictionary? What else is in the Zobrist dictionary?
FBK1. Fastball, first strike.
Koss, you're up. Go.
When you can not let noise or emotions distract your effort, the outcome.
Oh,
yeah.
That's not bad.
Pretty good.
Okay, so mine is that I tell my team, I don't know if I came up with this. I've been using this for a long time, so I don't know if this is original or if I ripped it off from
Let's
somebody.
Just say it's original. You did it.
I don't think it is, but I mean, I'd be happy to take credit for it.
Sure,
I can't remember where.
It's yours.
But it's the ability to play at a high level in spite of difficult circumstances. That's what I use.
We said the same thing.
We did.
That's
we
great.
Did. Yeah.
You've been reading the
good.
Zobrist dictionary.
Fist bump.
Fist bump.
So how do you get there?
I got there.
That's the question.
I got there a couple years ago. I've been playing for like my whole life, 15 years professionally, and I got there a couple years ago in Venezuela, and I was playing in Caracas.
Oh, so you weren't kidding?
Yeah, no.
Like you've reached the pinnacle.
I know I make a lot of jokes, Ryan. I make a lot of jokes. I get it. Yeah, I actually pitched in the big leagues before that, and yeah, I was not mentally tough. I wouldn't define it in that way at all. In Venezuela, playing in Caracas, there's two teams in Caracas, which is the capital. There's the Yankees,
Leones.
The Leones. They're like the Caracas team is like that, like they're the Yankees, right? And then there's another team, the Tiburones. They're not as popular, but they're still in the capital. They're big. So
like the Mets.
Yeah.
The Yankees and the Mets.
Well, they use the same stadium. So, yeah. But anyway, that's not
the Mets
relevant.
fans hate me right now.
Mets fans don't listen to this.
Jugular.
And it's not even relevant to the story, but the Tiburones, what they're famous for is drums. So if you're visiting, like I was, and you're pitching, like I was, and it gets a high moment in the game, late in the game, and the game's on the line, the drums come out. And it is loud, and it echoes. And the whole time you're on the mound going, I can't believe they're allowed to play music during the game.
So did you start dancing?
No, I didn't. Stepped off, gathered myself. I got some outs. I did very well. But that was a distraction I've never had to put up with before. And I was not prepared for.
That was mental toughness.
I still hear those drums.
That's a pretty good drum beat right there.
Don't they do that in Japan too?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's
like
always
they have a full
music.
band
It's
or something
constantly
up there, right?
playing though. You kind of drown it out after a while because it's constantly playing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not like that.
But it's at every stadium. So this is only a particular stadium.
Oh no, yeah, that would be harder because it's only at that stadium.
Yeah, that's the only.
Because in Japan it's everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They all have bands.
Zo, tell me a story when mental toughness comes to mind, and you can't use the biggest hit in Cubs history. That's low hanging fruit, man.
Yeah.
You got.
I mean, why not? Let's talk about that. I want to hear.
Well, that's what everybody wants to hear. So
Wasn't it a
there-
98
yeah.
mile an hour cutter? I mean,
I had somebody ask me that recently, like, what were you guys thinking? Like, how did you know? And the reality was, in that moment, was you got no other choice. When you have no other choice, you're going back out there and you want to win. Like, you've got to turn the page as quickly as possible and focus on the next moment. And so that's what we did.
yeah.
But I think the example that comes to mind for me is the more daily example. It's the one that it's like, man, I don't feel like doing this right now. This is hard. You know, the natural things that go through everybody's mind. I'd rather be doing this than what I have to do right now to be good. And in that moment, it's telling yourself, I like this. This is good for me. I want this. You know, this adversity that I'm dealing with right now, this failure that I just dealt with, bring it on. I love that challenge. And that to me is like more of an example of everyday mental toughness that people that end up finding a way to succeed in those other moments, they already do these things in the small moments that nobody's showing on a live television broadcast.
That's good. I wrote down a note because what you said was so good.
Wow.
I'll share it later. It's fine.
Tweet it later.
Yeah.
Talk about that at bat, though. I mean, even if there's not much to say.
Still going back there.
I do. I feel like the listeners would love to hear, what was going through your mind.
Let's not. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
It's not.
Okay. Well, they walked Anthony Rizzo to get to me, right? So right
Slap
there,
in the face.
it's a little bit of a slap in the face, a shot at your pride as a player.
Yeah.
And I'd played pretty well that series. So, but I mean, Anthony Rizzo is one of the best players in the league. So of course I'm not too shot about it. I'm like, okay, if I'm them, I'd probably do the same thing, with his capabilities up there to hit a home run and whatnot. So, facing a guy throwing 98-mile-an-hour nasty cutters, and he's got a funky windup named Brian Shaw. And I'm going, I faced him twice already this series. I've stunk it up the first 2 times. I think bad rollover and pop-up the first 2 times I faced him. So I knew what my approach was going to be going up there. But still, it was a very heavy situation to deal with. And I just kept telling myself, just focus on the thing that you have to do, the one thing that you have to do when you get up here. And that for me was just staying inside the ball during that at bat. In the first pitch, because I know he throws the same pitch, I'm thinking, okay, I want to see one. I just want to get the timing because I know I'm going to get another one of them later in the at bat, regardless of whether it's right down the middle. And of course, the first pitch was right down the middle, so I'm like, ugh. Or actually, it was the second pitch, but the first one was a ball, and then it was, I was still taking because I wanted to see a good one. Threw it right down the middle, and then he went nasty on me, got down outside corner, bottom of the knees. I was like, oh, that's like going to be an impossible pitch to hit. So the next one comes up, and I'm just, fighting it off. The ball goes to the other dugout. I'm just barely making contact, and I'm like, okay, just stay with it. He comes with another backdoor one, and I get the barrel, just enough of the barrel onto it to shoot it down the left field line. So, in those moments, you're not thinking about the situation. It's there, you feel it, but you can't think about it. And so the mental toughness of that moment is just trying to simplify and get down to that one thing that I need to focus on and try to block everything else out.
Please say clear the mechanism. Just say it. Just say for
say
love
it.
of the game, Kevin Costner.
Clear.
That's his third. We didn't even talk about that one.
And it becomes
So I
tunnel
just cleared
focus.
the mechanism. No big deal. Won the game. World Series.
You use that every time you get on the mound, don't you?
No. Every time I get on the mound, I'm like, thank God I get to play some more.
Now, do you feel like you were on the fence where you could have let your emotions kind of, and that the situation kind of take over, or you've done it so many times it kind of gets a little bit easier, at your level?
I think that it's tougher to just block things out because the emotions are so high in those moments.
Yeah.
That's where the emotions are what you have to recognize and allow yourself to know it's going to be there. Like my adrenaline's going to be high. My heart's going to be beating high.
Yeah.
And my mind's going to want to race, but I've got to find a way to not let it race everywhere
If you're
else.
surprised by that happening in the moment, it's already too late.
Yeah.
You kind of got to prepare
You
for that.
gotta know
you
it's
know
gonna
it's going to happen.
Yeah. And you just expect it. So you just say, you know what? You got to tell yourself, like you talked about before, that's your body. That's your body telling yourself, I'm about to do my best. So you got to remind yourself, that's not you freaking out. It's your body getting ready to do the best you could possibly do. And then you got to harness that power, harness that adrenaline, and turn it into focus, right?
Yeah.
And a small focus, a simple focus.
Yeah.
So you would say mental toughness is expecting that situation?
Expecting the stress of it,
Yeah.
but still being able to play at an optimal level, still being able to focus at an optimal level when you need to.
It's almost like you're separating yourself a little bit, out of body experience, where it's like these emotions are there, the stress is there, but mentally you're like pulling yourself away a little bit.
I would say it's the same exact thing when you're by yourself and you're doing a really hard workout and you're challenging yourself because there's part of you that's going, stop. You don't need to do this. Stop. Like just quit. Just give yourself the break. And then there's another part of you saying, no, I'm going to push myself right now.
I don't work out hard enough. Apparently.
Because you never think that.
Yeah, I'm sitting there like, man, this is starting to get tough. I'm out. See you guys.
Well, I think that's where the challenging yourself comes into play.
Okay.
And when other people, coaches, it's your job to do this for guys at times, right?
Yeah.
Like to find out what their limit is and just kind of push them a little beyond that, like a stretch goal, right? We talked a little bit about that a few days ago as friends.
A little.
Yeah, we talked a lot about it. But like you got to push each other,
Yeah.
And if you can't do that for yourself, because some people just don't naturally do that, you let somebody else do it for you.
Yeah.
And that's how we can build each other up in a way.
I think that I tell my guys this, that they kind of, when things get hard or you're in a stressful situation, it's hard physically, you kind of have this voice in the back of your head saying, it's hard. I can't do it. I've had enough. I want to quit. Sometimes that voice is stronger than others, but you have to talk to yourself equally as much. You have to talk to yourself more, actually, than you listen to yourself. You need to expect it to be hard and kind of have something prepared mentally before it even happens that says, okay, when it gets hard, I'm going to tell myself this. I'm going to push through it. I'm going to tell myself I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. And when you're reinforcing those thoughts, because you control your thoughts. And when you can control that, what you're putting into your brain, then it's easier to be tougher. It's easier not to listen to those voices in the back of your head.
I'll use an example, and you can use it away from pitching. But when I'm in the bullpen, and I've been in the bullpen a lot over my career, mostly in the minor leagues, one of the things I've just grown to just love to press upon my teammates. If you go out there and you feel great, and you make a pitch and the guy gets out, it's easy. If you throw a pitch and it's a ball and the umpire calls it a strike that day, you're like, this is easy. And sometimes the stars will align, and you can go out there and just get everybody out. But let's go for the 99% of the time when that does not happen. But our expectations are like, well, if I do everything correctly, then I'm just gonna go out there and get outs. Outs don't grow on trees. You got to get them. And they're not always easy. And so for me, I'm like, if it's 73 degrees and sunny, and you're playing against a team that's just got off a road trip and they've got 1 hour sleep, and the guy didn't have his contacts in, I'm like, baseball's easy. Let's just assume that they're all well rested. They know everything about you. They know exactly what sequence you're going to do. The umpire that day, he decided that he doesn't like anybody. The zone is small.
Yeah.
And the catcher can't catch anything that day because he could be, I don't know, tired or something. And so he can't catch it and hold it there. I mean, everything's against you, right? Go out there just assuming that everything will be against you. Because the problem is, the reason we have these overwhelming moments is because we think that we've done so much so that the world's just going to play out in such a way that we're like, oh, it's going to just fall in my lap.
Yeah.
And then you get out there and a guy hits a double off the wall and you're like, that wasn't supposed to happen.
Why me?
Why me, God?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is so true.
If it's easy, it's easy.
Absolutely.
Go out there and do it anytime you want.
Yeah, I mean, everybody deals with adversity. Everybody deals with tough things that happen to them throughout the year. The championship team, whoever wins it all this year, they're going to deal with the same thing to the last place team. Everybody deals with crap. The people who win, or the people who perform, just have a better way of dealing with it. They handle tough circumstances better. They respond better, and they're not kind of victimized by their circumstances.
I think the mental toughness comes in play when everything's on the line and it's up to you. But then I think we've been kind of touching on the mental toughness when things are against you.
Talk about it in regard to training, because you train a lot of guys, and you see guys of varying toughness levels, right? We talk about a physical toughness, but then there's a mental toughness too.
Yeah.
What do you characterize as a guy in the weight room that's mentally tough versus
Me.
Tim?
I think it's mental toughness. Me personally, I think it's a little bit easier in the weight room versus on the field.
Why is that?
I just think, there's not a lot of skill involved when we're training. Don't get me wrong. You got to focus. There's a lot going on, but trying to hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, compared to doing a lunge the right way. But not everyone likes to work out. Some guys struggle with that. You just got to push. I got to push them,
Yeah. A lot of trainers, too, use, or coaches as well that are running this for their team, they use conditioning as a way to build mental toughness too, right?
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, that was one of the main ways that coaches started practices or ended practices. It was like, okay, conditioning, here we go. And you're running until you can barely breathe, right?
Yeah.
I feel like coaches don't really do that in baseball anymore because they don't see the actual physical benefit to it that much. And I understand because, you're not ever really doing anything like that on a baseball field, but isn't there a mental aspect to that?
Ooh.
Yeah, I do. I mean,
wants to
I'll
answer?
answer. Yeah, I do that. We do a pretty heavy conditioning off-season workout, and it's for that reason. I know we do it kind of before Christmas break. They'll go off home for Christmas. I know they're not going to be sprinting until they puke over Christmas break. It's not to get in the best shape possible. It's to push through the limit. When you don't think you can do anymore, we're gonna teach you that you can. You're gonna push through that. It's to control your thoughts, as I was saying earlier. When it gets hard, you got to reinforce to yourself that you can do it. It's putting yourself in a tough situation and still, we emphasize controlling your body language when you're tired and not giving off the impression of how hard it is. And it's putting yourself in a tough situation and learning how to respond to it is what we're trying to reinforce.
When I was after 5 years being in pro ball, I went back and spoke at my college. And the one thing I remember about college is that we had the fitness test. And it was like run 2 miles in a certain time. It was run triangles on a field, which I didn't even know what those were. But you run tough. You run from home plate, foul pole, straight across the field. Who came up with this? And then we did something else. I forgot the other one. Probably mentally tough. Blocked that out of my head.
You don't go to that dark place anymore.
And so I'm going to speak to my old college, and I'm like, why would these guys care about anything I have to say? So I told a few big league stories. One. And then I basically said, do you want to know why that your coach wants you to wake up at 6 a.m. and run up and down hills and run this fitness test? Do they really care how fit you are? Or are they going to rely on you mentally? Because you have to manage your time to where you're capable of doing this. And are you going to show up?
Yeah.
Can you be a guy that's going to do this garbage? I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying you don't really care if they run 6 triangles or whatever. Like, you want to know who's prepared themselves to do that. And that's what I was telling them. I'm like, don't look at it as like, oh, I have to do this stuff. Look at it as, all right, he's going to trust me in those moments when he's going to need to trust me the most.
To the coaches out there, I think there's different ways to find how to push your guys mentally using conditioning. Instead of a long period of time, like a 2 mile, that kind of thing, it's better to do interval, because baseball, the energy systems you're going to be using is more anaerobic. So instead of having them doing this killer circuit that lasts 15 minutes and smoking them and seeing who's tough, it'd be better to do something where it requires them to move fast, or let's just say sprint for 30 yards under a certain time that you want. And then they get a certain rest ratio. And then doing a bunch of those, that's fine, because that does get taxing. But that's going to be a little bit more parallel to the energy system that you're going to be, using in the game. I'm not a huge fan of the
long distance running for conditioning.
And the crazy conditioning just to see who's tough. I understand the high school coaches. I get it. I know that you're trying to weed out the ones that need to be, but I just think there's better ways to do that.
Like what? What are some better ways to do it?
That's smart.
Well, he just said.
Well, I just gave one example.
The interval.
Okay, yeah, I thought you meant other ways apart from like physical.
Well, yeah, I
conditioning,
think,
as I thought you were saying.
And I'm not a baseball coach, but doing some type of defensive drill perfectly. Everyone does it, perfect one time in a row. That's mentally exhausting. And that's connecting mental toughness to the actual game of what you're going to be thinking and feeling in a game, because you're not going to be
adding pressure.
You're not going to be exhausted physically on the field by sprinting for 8 minutes. Connecting the word mental toughness, you're not going to have that in baseball. Other sports you will. So that does connect to other sports.
I'm going to disagree with you on that. Okay, you may not have it from a long distance breathability standpoint, like maybe I can't breathe. You're not going to have that necessarily on a baseball field.
Sure.
But you will have injury stuff that is physical that you have to work through on a baseball field.
Yeah.
We all know that have dealt with it and played every day. You play injured at times, and we all know that there are some guys that just can't handle having like a hangnail while they're playing.
Well, you can't really practice for that.
Yes, you sure can.
In regards to an injury?
Yeah.
Well, that goes back to knowing
what are you
yourself.
Do? Break their leg and then say, all right, let's go. Let's do some intervals.
That's when you're tied in with the mob.
No, I think you kind of push them to that level of physical exhaustion to where they're like, I can't do this as good as I want to do it.
Yeah.
I can't do this as good as I want to do it. And that's where the frustration comes in with baseball when you have an injury, because you're like, I can't, but my team still needs me right now.
Yeah.
I'm not at my best, but my team still needs me. That's a mental toughness moment that you have to work through.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears a little bit. We talked about like the physical component of mental toughness, the conditioning and part. What about when we alluded to it at the beginning? But just the pressure. The pressure when the game's on the line, or when you got some kind of distraction. Just the ability to kind of stay focused in the moment. As a part of mental toughness. Also, there's not necessarily the physical component, but you still got to block out the circumstances around you and do your job in that moment.
Yeah, I think practicing that in your mind can help.
Sure.
I have a story when I was in Little League. I was probably 11. And, when you're in the backyard with your brothers or your friends, and you'd be like, all right, full count, bottom of the ninth.
Game's on the line.
Game's on the line. Like you'll say it. You'll say it out loud.
Yeah.
You're at the plate, and then they throw that wiffle ball, and then you just crush it over the garage. And then, you run the bases, and it's a great moment. But, like, in that moment, I was practicing it. That we would do that over and over again. And then sure enough, either the next year or that year, I'm in that situation in the game, and it was full count, bottom of the seventh. I think we played 7 innings, tied up, guys on third base. I'm at the plate, 2 outs, and I step out the box for a second, and that image of me in the backyard with my brothers went through my head just for a quick second.
You've done it before.
And then I went back into the box. And I smoked that ball.
Out.
No,
yeah.
I smoked it over the shortstop and had the game-winning hit.
Game over.
And I was 11 years old and practiced something I didn't even know that I did, And I think, just taking 100 swings in the cage and not connecting your brain to what you're doing, or just kind of just feeling it out, I feel like you're missing on opportunities to making that real time in your head.
I think the pressure of the moment, though, it's going to be so much different than what you create in your head, and it's the ability to fail in those moments, in that same exact moment, to fail and still believe and want the next opportunity. And that's where kids, and I'll be honest, I've struggled with it for a lot of my career. There are times where I've 3 for 4 and I've had a good game, and guess what? The 5th at bat's the one that counts the most for the team.
Yeah.
And it's the toughest pitcher I've faced all day. And I'm like, seeing who's coming up, and I'm like, well, do you want it to get to you or not? And that's when the rubber meets the road with that mental toughness. Are you going to say, yeah, bring it on, I want the 5th? Or are you going to be like, no, I'm good, I hope somebody else gets it done, or I hope we just get out and the game's over? You got to recognize that that's what's going through your mind at that time. Yeah. And you got to focus and
you got to make a choice.
You got to make a choice. I want this, and you got to tell yourself, I want this, bring it on, give it to me. My best moment for me in regard to that came this past year when I wasn't playing in a game. I wasn't starting the game. We were in Philadelphia, sitting on the bench with some other guys, and we start just hitting homer after homer, all the guys that were in. Everybody's hitting homers. It was like we're up by 10 runs in the 5th inning or something. So by the end of that game, some of those starters are going to get pulled out, and he's going to have some other guys go in just to give the regulars a breather a little bit. Rizzo and Chris Bryan and some of these guys that were playing every day needed to come out to give them at least a couple innings off in the game. So we have a choice, the guys on the bench. If you're a veteran like me, I could have been like, you know what, I'm good. I'm just going to stay out of this, right? And in the past, because I'd be tired and I was getting my off day, I'd usually be like, oh, yeah, I'm good. I don't need this at bat, Go ahead and put somebody else in. But I was like, you know what? I want this. I need this at bat. I'd been struggling. I'm like, get me in there. So I started thinking from the 6th inning on, I'm coming in this game. I'm going to get an at bat, and I'm going to make something of it. And so sure enough, I was practicing, and they're like, we're getting to the 8th and 9th. And I went up to one of our coaches. I said, hey, if you need somebody to pinch hit, I'm your man. I'm ready. Put me in, coach, like that whole moment. And I've never done that before in my entire career. I've never done it. And he was like, oh, okay, all right, we'll get you in a bat, so
rain delay.
Pull somebody out that had been playing the whole game, and put me in, and we're up 14 runs or whatever. So I come in, 2 strikes, hit a slider for a homer to right field. I have never been more pumped in my entire life to come back in to the dugout and be like, yes, yeah, just so excited that even though it didn't matter for the game at all, the game was already over. The at bat didn't really even matter for me, except for the fact that I made it matter. Yeah. I wanted it to matter, awesome. And I wanted the situation to happen. So, I have 100 other situations where I didn't want that, but that was the one that worked out. And man, I felt like that helped turn a corner for me in my season.
Dang.
That's good.
as far as mentally goes. Maybe not
I
statistically.
remember that game.
You were there. You were there, weren't you?
I was there for that game. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
Somehow
cool.
I feel bad for the pitcher in that moment. I don't know.
Of course you do.
He was competing out there too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I think having a plan is key. So don't let the moment sneak up on you. So I got called up to the big leagues 2008, and I had a goal. My plan was to look like I had pitched in the big leagues before, so that the average fan that's watching the game's like, oh, this guy looks like he's done it before. Oh, I don't want to look like a fish out of water. I've never played before. I don't want to trip running out there. Things like that. So mine was very basic. I can't control what the hitter does, on my pitches or the umpire. I can't control that stuff. I want to look like I've done it before. So I went out there. Whatever happened, great. And then that night, I was walking by the hotel lobby, or through the hotel lobby, and Jason Kendall was the catcher that night. And he called me over and was like, I just want to let you know that you look like you've pitched in the big leagues before. And to me, that was a win.
He said
I was
that.
like,
He said that to you. Well,
he
that's
said
cool.
that, Jason. I was like, awesome,
He
man.
was a vet too, even at the time.
Yeah, I mean, he'd only been playing like 14 years in the show. And so after he got done signing my cards, I was like, I was like, well, cool. That's funny because I was like, that's actually what I tried to do. That was my one goal, is to look like I belonged out there, and I'd done it before. And he goes, well, it's funny because another guy got called up a week before I did to have his major league debut. And it was, granted, mine was in the Nationals stadium. This guy went to Fenway Park, and he's from the Northeast.
Oh, man. that
So
was
his
exciting.
debut's at Fenway Park. He said he went out to the mound. This guy that I know, he goes out to the mound, and he was like, all right, you ready? He goes, we're going over signs and stuff. And this guy's like looking in the stands.
Yeah, like
Totally, he's
in
like
awe.
he's soaking in this moment like no other. He's like, I used to watch games from up there, And Jason Kendall's like, come back. All right, breathe it in. All right, now it's time to get somebody out. And he goes, I didn't have to do that with you. You came out there and we go, all right, it's all business. What are we doing? Let's get to work. And and to me, that was just the simple thing of having a plan.
Yeah, you were prepared.
I wasn't overwhelmed by the moment.
That's good stuff.
That's really good.
So what are some practical things that some guys can do to become a little bit, maybe, it's kind of hard to practice this, but just maybe become a little bit more aware, maybe, or to become mentally tougher? How would you tell a 16-year-old out there, here's a couple things you can do to become a little bit more mentally tough?
One of the latest things that guys are starting to do that I think really helps, and I've started to use it as well, is something called mindfulness. And they say mindfulness meditation, but really it's just the ability to understand what's going on in your mind and clear out all the clutter, right? So what am I thinking currently, and how do I change those thoughts or get back into the present moment? Because, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, sometimes our thoughts get ahead of ourselves. Sometimes they're behind us, in the past. We have to try to stay in the moment. And mindfulness is all about clearing out all that past and future stuff and focusing in the present moment. So that's one thing is learning a little bit more about that, what mindfulness means, and helping yourself recognize what you're already thinking. Because I think when I was a kid, I didn't even know what I was thinking. I was thinking these self-defeating thoughts, and I didn't even know it until I start kind of listening to what's going on in my head. And then, like you talked about before, you got to start talking to yourself in the right way, right? So that's the next step. Listen to what's already going on in there, and then you got to start telling yourself the things that matter. And for me, the big tip in what you tell yourself is, for me, it's I like adversity. Bring it on. Give me the challenge. That will help me grow. If there's something tough, bring it on. Like, I'm not going to avoid that. I want that because I know I can't grow unless I get some of that in my life. So yes, of course, everybody wants to succeed, but succeeding can also be one of those things that makes you lazy and complacent. So success isn't the end-all, be-all. It's really the process and the growth that you want in the end.
God.
Dang, that's good.
Whatever I was going to say.
Yeah, I'm just. I think we're done.
That's
That
all I
wraps it
got.
up.
Terrible.
That wraps it
That's
up.
all I got. I just died. I got nothing else in the brain.
What do you guys think about, I gave that illustration of me as a kid in the backyard and playing a situation through my head and playing it out. What do you guys think about that in regards to practice? You think, have you heard of that? Have you done that before? Do you think it would be?
I think it helps a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, mental imagery, visualization.
Yeah, just kind of playing that
there's
situation.
a whole, there's people that make a living teaching this, sports psychology. This is a big deal. And, when you're doing that, it's important to try to incorporate all of your senses.
Yep.
When you're doing this imagery, this visualization, sight, smell, hear, feel. All your senses need to be incorporated into what you're trying to visualize. Try to put yourself in the moment, the night before, or on the way to the field. And I love it. I think mental imagery is a big deal.
Yeah, I think, if you go hit with your buddy in the cages and you're working on a lot of specific things, and then maybe at the end, for the last 30 minutes, you guys talk about situations, but like you personally, like think it, feel it, like really try to imagine you're in that situation and then just perform in that one moment.
And the result is when you're in that moment, it acts like you almost feel like you've been there before.
Yeah.
So when you played that scenario out in wiffle ball, you got in the game and you're like, there was a part of you that goes, I feel like I've done this before.
Yeah, there was.
And there's some calmness there.
Yeah, 100%.
I have some teammates that do that every day before the game. I don't personally do that, but what you're talking about, every day before the game, right before the game, they'll be in the cage and they'll be calling out situations and like what they want to try to do with the ball.
Yeah,
when they're getting ready for the game. So I'm a big believer in visualization, and
cool.
I think it's a little tougher in baseball because you have all the different angles of the pitch, and it's hard to kind of get yourself in the batter's box per se and see all the ways that the pitch is going to go. But as far as thinking about what you're capable of doing and presenting a positive frame of mind to what you're capable of doing,
seeing yourself be successful,
I think that's great.
Yeah, because a lot of times naturally we get scared to fail. And we're reinforcing negative thoughts. Failure thoughts keep going through our mind over and over and over again. And when you get in the box, no wonder you're not confident because you just saw yourself fail 1,000 times.
Yep.
And your brain can't tell the difference between fantasy and reality. In your brain, it's that's the way we're wired. It's all the same. It's like we just actually did fail, even though we didn't. Even though we're just thinking that we did. And positive thoughts, positive reinforcement, I think is critical.
If I was in the cage calling it out, I'd be like, all right, contact. Contact. Man, I'm awesome. Yeah. Focus on contact. The only thing I want to say for like practical advice, I'll use this analogy. I had a pitching coach that talked about, he used the boxing analogy. Always keep your guard up. If you look at a boxer's, his gloves are here. And the boxers that lose are the ones that their gloves go down, when things are close. And I use that analogy because I've told it to myself. And what that means in the baseball world, now I'll use an example. We had a guy come from another team. He came to play in Colorado Springs, which is the hardest place in the world to pitch on the planet Earth. I haven't played on the moon, but this is close. And, you're 6,000 feet up and, the lights maybe aren't great and just the situation and guys don't feel great. So this guy comes in. He's a closer for us. He gets 2 outs. He's got a couple guys on. No big deal. Gives up a fly ball to the outfield. He starts walking off the field like that's 3 outs. Like, oh, that's it. Like, game's over or whatever. Starts walking off, not even watching. Well, lo and behold, who knew? Somehow the ball didn't get caught. That's never happened in baseball before. So this guy was surprised. When he was walking off the field, those gloves started to lower a little bit. And then, I got to pitch to another guy. It's really hard to get those gloves back up. So when you're out there, keep your guard up. You're a boxer, and you don't know when the game's over. We don't have whistles, but, the last out's made, and now you have replay, and you have all this stuff. You don't know when the game is actually over. You just keep your guard up. And then finally when the umpire's like, you have to go home, be like, oh, okay. So maybe you look a little stupid. Yeah. Maybe I look stupid out there because I feel like the catcher could throw a bad throw, but I'm ready if he throws it at my feet or if he throws it over my head. Yeah. I'm going to catch it. Yeah. I'm not going to assume everything is going to work out in the world. Yeah. So keep your guard up at all times.
You see that from a team standpoint too, don't you? Teams do the same thing. They're comfortable. They're winning by 4 or 5 runs, and what they do, they let their guard down a little bit. But what's the phrase that we always say? You never know. You never know what's going to happen. So whenever you're on top, and I saw some guys do it when I'm watching games on TV, they'll remind each other, "Hey, you never know. It's not it's not over until it's over." And that's, I think, what you're saying from an individual, but also a team standpoint.
Absolutely. You're ahead a couple runs. Human nature. You got to fight the flesh. That's what I tell my guy. You got to fight human nature all the time. You want to take the foot off the gas pedal. You want to relax, have a little fun. Everything's always so serious. Loosen up. Boom. Next thing you know, bat hop, hanging breaking ball. Boom. All of a sudden, you're down 2.
To me, you go the flip side of that. If I say I'm a second baseman and I'm like, man, we're playing so good, we're about to win this game, and a ground ball is hit to me, instead of being like kind of nonchalant with it, I would I would tackle it. I'm like, let's chest it up like Happy Gilmore, and then throw the ball to first. I think you almost have to go, all right, my body's telling me to let up a little bit. So instead, I'm going to go paranoia and go over the top. I think you almost have to meet it in a way.
So,
Otherwise, it'll
you're
eat
saying
you up.
over adjust because
Not in a ridiculous way, but to know that your tendency is to let up.
That's your tendency. So you got to stay focused even more.
I feel like awareness is what we come back to after every episode, but that's so critical here.
I'm keeping my guard up.
Right now, Tim's aware of anything.
He's aware of everything. I could get you with a jab right in the gut right now.
I can touch your beard, but not your face, probably.
Well, you got to be aware, man. You got to have some awareness and know what's going through your head. You know, sometimes people they're not even consciously aware of, some of the stuff that gets reinforced in their mind and don't really know where they are on the spectrum of mental toughness. So.
I think a way to red flags on if you're mentally tough or not, if you start blaming everybody else.
That's good.
That's a red flag. If you feel like you're blaming everybody else, maybe even the weather or the umpire or your second baseman or your coach or the other team.
Or the elevation in Colorado Springs.
Yeah, no one
Take
ever
ownership.
said anything. Yeah. If you find yourself blaming somebody, you may be a mental midget.
Yeah.
You don't want
all the most mentally tough people I've ever played with, they all are harder on themselves than they are on anybody else.
Yeah.
And I think there's a balance. You got to be able to recognize what your own capabilities are, know yourself well enough to know what you're capable of, and then be positive and encouraging in the moment that you need to. But you also got to recognize when you need to be critical and kind of get back to the focus of staying on guard, like you said. That's
paranoia.
Keep the hands up and get back to the grind.
You should box, Tim. You should be a boxer.
You kind of look like a boxer right now.
Good.
I got the wingspan, my long arms.
I think it's called reach.
Reach.
In boxing.
Wingspan, same thing.
I think that's a wrap. We're
That's
getting
good.
off the rails a little bit here.
Well, that does it for this episode of Show and Go. If you have any questions or comments, topics you'd like to hear discussed on future episodes, feel free to interact with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Show and Go. And I'd like to thank the boys of the TheoCast podcast for letting us use their wonderful equipment and setup today and every day until they decide that we can't come back. On behalf of myself, Zoe, Jay Money, and Coach, thanks for listening, and join us next time on The Show and Go. Keep that guard up.